Hey, everybody. This episode of Our Kids Play Hockey is brought to you by our title sponsor, NHL Sense Arena. Look, we all want our kids to succeed in hockey, but let's face it, finding training that's both effective and enjoyable can be a real challenge, and not to mention expensive and a total drain on time, especially if you have to drive to the rink, pay a private instructor. There's so many reasons that money gets spent on this game. But that's where NHL Sense Arena steps in. It's a virtual reality training game that brings the rink into your home that takes off-ice training to a new reality. It's designed to improve hockey sense and IQ, something that's lacking majorly in the game today for both players and goalies. And you get unlimited access to over 100 drills and training plans from top coaches and players that can be played anytime, anywhere, with drills approved by USA Hockey player and goalie development directors. Look, improving mental hockey skills at home has really never been more fun, and any hockey player that uses this is going to have a blast. All right. I've used this before on my own, and it feels like you're so immersed in an arena, you sometimes forget you have a headset on. And again, it's not being on the ice, but it allows you to work on some of these skill sets like scanning, as I said before, hockey IQ, looking around the rink, making the right plays, that getting those repetitions in now as a hockey player are super important for your development. So NHL Sense Arena is giving all the listeners an exclusive offer for $50 off an annual plan when you use our code Hockey Never Stops at checkout. Again, that's Hockey Never Stops. All you got to do is go to hockey.sensearena.com. Again, that's hockey.sensearena.com. Use the code Hockey Never Stops, and you'll save $50 on your annual plan of NHL Sense Arena. Make sure to check that out and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hey, everybody. We got Stéphane Matteau on the show today. Everybody from New York and New Jersey is going, Matteau, Matteau, Matteau. But those of you who don't know, he played over 800 games in the NHL. He is probably one of the, if not the most iconic moments in Rangers history. He will tell us today where he thinks that moment ranks for those of you that are Rangers fans out there. But if you're not a Rangers fan, you're a hockey fan, great episode today with him. We talk a lot about him as a hockey dad with his own kids and some of the mistakes he's made, some of the successes he's made. It was really powerful. He really opened up to us about his two children who both play professional hockey, and even how he's doing that with his grandkids now. So something to listen to as someone who's really kind of New York hockey royalty. And then beyond that, we talked about, what he's doing in the game right now with his book and his work with children to deal with anxiety and depression, and how he's going from school to school, sending this message to these kids and how they respond to it. So really powerful episode with a really powerful person in hockey. I want to remind you, as always, to head over to ourkidsplayhockey.com to check out our little section of gifts that we have for everybody. Also, if you haven't done so already, please give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast. It really helps us out a lot, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, Google, or anywhere in between. It means a lot. And above all, make sure you join our Facebook group, Our Kids Play Hockey. It's a private group, a couple yes or no questions. You jump right in. We kind of continue the conversations there and sometimes ask for episode advice or topics that you want to hear about. But without further ado, let's jump into the episode with former New York Ranger Stéphane Matteau. Here we go. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias. I'm joined, as always, by my two line mates, Mike Benelli and Christy Casciano Burns. Our guest today played over 800 regular season games in the NHL for multiple teams, but his name has become synonymous with one of the most iconic moments in New York Rangers history. That's a hint at who we're talking to. He is a proud father to his son, Stéphane, and daughter, Miss Allison. I was told to say that, both whom play professional hockey, and he is the author of the new book, Make It Happen, which is available everywhere now. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming Stéphane Matteau to the show today. Stéphane, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
What a beautiful introduction. Thank you very much.
We take pride in them. Yeah, we take part in introductions here, man.
That was very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you. And I'll say that, look, intros for people like you write themselves, but it is fun to say them. But Stéphane, before we dive into what we want to talk today, I actually wanted to ask you about you as a hockey dad. I want to know what it's like to be on the other side of the glass. Yeah, again, you had a full NHL career. You're a Stanley Cup champion. Tell us about the challenges of being a hockey dad.
Well, a hockey dad who played hockey for a living, I thought I was going to go in there and have a coffee and relax because I had a stressful job, and I was told the opposite. And I shared that story for a few times in my life that I grew up, my dad was really, really hard on me playing hockey. He was never satisfied with my production. He always wanted me to. So I thought it was pretty hard growing up. But later on, when I had kids on my own, I promised myself I'll never become that type of parent, not to, how can I say, I don't want to, it's not on my dad did his best raising me, and he did a pretty good job. But I promised myself I was never going to do it myself. So I end up maybe twice as bad as my dad, and on my son's side. And I wish my son would have been on the show today, but to explain that I was afraid that he was going to go through exactly the same thing that I went through as a kid. I wanted him to skip all the hard work that it takes. So I was hard on him. So but I was totally the opposite on my daughter's side. So I thought I was a good dad, but if I could go back in time, which I can't, I would take it easy. But to answer your question, I was a hard dad. I wanted my son to be perfect and my daughter to be perfect.
That's a good lesson for parents who are listening right now, because the tendency is you got to be hard on them if you want to be good. But you're saying not necessarily.
I'm older now. I'm a grandfather. My son has 2 kids, and I would not. My son was not. He would not have become a better player or worse player if I would have been hard on him or soft on him. What I missed over the years, to the parents who are watching and listening, is I wasted so many quality times alone in the car with my son for hours and hours and hours for years, and I missed that. I regret that, and I've said that's his time. Even though I wanted him to be a professional, which he became a professional, he still played. He's in Germany. He was in Germany last year. I missed those times, so I regret that part of parenting. But if it's, I will make it up with my grandson. But to the parents out there, first of all, also it's hard to coach your own son. It's hard. I didn't trust. A lot of parents go through the same thing. They don't trust the coaches out there. They don't trust that your son, your daughter would not have the proper ice time. And I was one of them also. I said, I'm going to coach him. You're not going to miss any shift. So that was totally wrong. So to the parents out there, chill out, have a coffee, sit in the stands. And if it's too hard on you, don't come to the rink and stay in the car. And that's your son time. And that's his, because you cannot make it back. You cannot go back in time. And the good experience is the best time when you are 8, 9, 10, 14 years old playing hockey. That's the best time to play hockey, because after that it becomes a job and it's not as fun. If it should be fun, but it's not always fun.
Yeah, I think the pandemic helped us with that too, right? As parents of young kids, we weren't allowed in the rink, and you had to drop your kid off and just hope it was going okay. And I think for the most part, the kids that were going to get through that got through it, and they probably flourished. I know as a coach in those rinks without parents, the atmosphere and the tension and just the whole demeanor of the kids really did change. You could noticeably see, especially the kids that you knew had hard parents, you could really see their demeanor change and just their sense of who they were playing for came out. And at the end of the day, your kids are obviously gifted athletes and have God-given talent to get where they need to get. And I think and we talk about this on the show a lot, that your kids are going to get where they're going to get, and you can make the whole experience better. I mean, you just mentioned it. I mean, so let me ask you something real quickly. What was the difference with your daughter? Like did you say, okay, I'm going to sit back and just let it all, and was the pressure because, I mean, let's be honest, right? Is the pressure because you're like, well, where's she really going to go? Like, is she going to play in the NHL? No. So is it because it didn't matter, or because you said, oh, I just want to really enjoy these different experiences with her?
Right. Or maybe you learned your lesson with your son.
No, I learned my lesson over the years, but it was too late because they were gone. I was gone, they were gone, and it's a very good question. I really care about my daughter, where she went. She went to Lake Placid at Northwood for 2 years, and then she signed with the Black Bears in Maine for 4 years. But it was 2 different personality. My son, I was kind of hard on him, and it took it. I was almost bullying him. Now I can use those words because in my program that I do in the last few years, those words would have never come up, but I was bullying him the way I was getting bullied by my coaches in the NHL and juniors, and maybe not minor hockey, but my daughter, right from the get-go, she kind of let me know, and like, if you are hard, like you're hard on my Steph Jr., I would quit hockey, and she made a promise. So I let her go, and I trusted her, and it was two different worlds. So I was coaching her, but also I was not coaching her, and I trusted both of them. I was a two different parent with my daughter and with my son.
That's interesting.
But that's a good question. I care about my daughter, but I saw my son, like a lot of parents. I saw my son going through the NHL and having the perfect life and making all that money, and I wanted him to help him because I went through it over the years. But I wanted him to skip the hard time that I went through, because I didn't go the easy route. I had Pat Byrne as a coach for 2 years in juniors. He was really hard on me. I had Alain Vigneault for 2 years in juniors. He was really hard on me. I had Daryl Sutter in the National Hockey League for 7 years, the craziest coach I ever had. And I had Mike Keenan for 4 different teams in the national. So I never had, and it worked out because on my side, because I played 13 years in the National Hockey League. So without knowing it, I wanted to sometime use that path, because my son grew up in a very good environment, not lazy, but he took it easy at times, and I wanted him to be totally the opposite: go hard, work hard, and success will come. But I think he tested me a lot of times, and I think he deserved it now that I can talk about it. And but it's all good. I have a very good relationship with my son today, but we very barely talks about hockey, which I should have done years ago.
Very good. That's fascinating. And then, did your son have as much passion of wanting to pursue hockey as is his dream, or was it your dream pushing him that, or were you both on the same page?
It's hard to measure, but I really believe he really wanted to be a hockey player, because he grew up in an environment in the locker room with the Wayne Gretzky's and the Vinny Danfus and Owen Nolan and Olowengo. So this is where he grew up, and he was drafted by the Devils at a very young age. He made the team as an 18-year-old, playing on the same line, and Kovalchuk is an 18-year-old. So he made it. There's not too many kids or players who makes it at the age of 18. I started to play with, so his passion, he didn't make it because just of his name, because he put a lot of effort into it. So many hours playing in the driveway and at the park and at the rink, just like we did. I think his passion. I was passionate about. I was more passionate about the discipline of the game, and try to teach him the discipline, the hard work, because I didn't do it on my side all the time. And even though I was a successful hockey player for many years, I kind of took it easy too many times, and I try to teach him not to take it easy. So but he saw through me pretty quickly, and he tried to go through the same thing. That's what made me mad a few times. But he was very passionate, and he's still very passionate. He still plays overseas now, and he's passionate about the game, but also about his family.
I always love hearing about these different journeys that everyone goes through. It's just so intriguing. Yeah.
We have a ton of questions that we got to get in, and we're not going to talk about your baseball success and why you didn't push him in baseball, because it's such an easier sport for him to probably have played. But I think I think winning a Little League World Series and all those kind of great things that your life brought you. But it is a great cautionary tale, right, for parents to just see, look at your kids, feel where that line might be. We all talk about this a lot on the show. We do have to push. Because nowadays too, it's and you're probably going to see it in your grandkids, that it's easier to just do nothing and not be bored than to not push a little bit. And you still have to guide, but there's a point where you got to say, okay, let's make it a fun guide as opposed to a stressful, conflicting guide. And I think
it's a fun place. It's a very good point, Mike. It should be a great environment. being at the rink all those weekends that I've growing up, and my kids, it was a safe place, having friends and being one of the shy person in the locker room growing up. It was my safe environment. And then what I'm afraid is when the parents are too hard, the kids will quit at some point, and that's the last thing you want your kids to stop something that you love, that they love. So there's a fine line, and we have to acknowledge it. That's why it's important to have those talks. And I didn't have all the answers, but now I'm kind of away. My kids are gone now from home, and I can teach some of the parents who are going through the same thing. They last thing also, they before we get to the next question, it's like I heard a lot of parents say, "Well, I spent so much money on you spending like all those weekends that you owe me an effort. You owe me to play as hard as possible because I spent $5,000 the last month or something," which should be totally false. Like your kid don't owe you anything. You do it because you're passionate, same way that your son or your daughter is passionate about. You should not bring the money on the table every single time that your son is not performing.
Yeah, Steph, I agree with you 100%. I've had parents ask me the ROI on hockey in terms of, well, if they can get a scholarship or they can get to the pros. I said the ROI on hockey is your kid is learning life lessons that they can apply to their life, period, whether it's in hockey or anything professionally. Steph, you brought something up earlier. The coaches you named that you played for, if there was a hall of fame of tough NHL coaches from the turn of the century, it sounds like you played for almost all of them. And it's amazing how you said, and I appreciate your vulnerability and the way you're discussing that you bullied your son and that you're okay saying that now. There's a lot of growth here that I want to dive into. Excuse me. And one of the things that I know you do a lot of work to help children that live with anxiety and depression. And again, we're kind of alluding to that this is something you've experienced. It's something that you might have delved on your own children, which you recognize now, and you're using the language now to educate others. Where did the passion start or the realization start of, I need to spread this message? Because you've been incredibly vulnerable with your own story there, which a lot of people have a hard time doing.
Well, it's experience, it's pain, a lot of life experience that I lived over the years. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of my past. I have a lot of regrets, but I'm moving forward today. Like a lot of, we should not live in the past. That's too many. But I can learn. I can teach what I've done, and I'm not ashamed of it. Do I regret it? Of course, I regret it. But I've decided in my life to move forward. When I retired 20 years ago already, that I was at loss. I didn't know what to do with after my career. I own a travel agency. I didn't like it. I was a stick rep for the NHL. I didn't like it. I own a few restaurant business. I didn't like it. And I started to do a school program in Pennsylvania. And my interest started my passion started to develop right there. But I was doing hockey schools in the past, and I was very good with the kids, very, very patient. And I was totally the opposite what my father or I was experiencing with my kids. I'm very patient with other kids. And and my program started with one school. Now I'm in about 15, 20, 30 schools in the Bronx, Brooklyn, North Rockland. I'm all over the place. So I'm very passionate what I do. But I've sharing my experience with those kids instead of bragging about the Lamborghini I don't have and the mansion I don't have, because a lot of kids are fascinated about some of the athletes, what they portray, what they show on TV and stuff. And I try to teach them it's not real. I try to teach them that we are normal people. We struggle with a lot of stuff that they're going through, the same thing. So my anxiety, I have a lot of anxiety going on out there, but I can teach them some tricks to go away. Low self-esteem, I'm still struggling with that, but I can teach them also that it's all right to go through what you're going through. So my program is more of a kind of a group therapy where it's a setting of 20, 25 kids. I talk a little bit about my experience, but when the magic occur, it's when the kids start talking to each other and give each other some tips how they cope and how they proceed with their every single day struggles.
It's
Part of the
fascinating.
problem is that not enough kids talk about it, that they they're hiding their inner feelings and they don't want to open up and share, and they just don't have enough avenues?
They that's a very good point, but that's why my program, I believe, I don't believe in seeing them only one time leaves an impact. I had my program, it's a 4-day program. First day, everyone are nervous, not they don't take me seriously. I don't want to say that, but they don't know me. Second day, 3 weeks later, I go see them. They do a research on me, on my career, and some of my articles are acceptable for what's the word?
Accessible.
Accessible, yeah.
And those are big. That's a big word. I tried to
You got it. You got
well,
it.
I didn't get it, but don't ask me to say that again. So they have access to some of the articles in my on the web, and they
Yeah.
so second time around, oh, he trusts, he cares about us. He's back, and the third time we play hockey with them, and then I become not a superstars in their schools. I become someone that cares, they can trust, and I go through classes, and then I see them 4 different times. So that's what I like about my program. They can trust me, and then I'm there for another group 2-3 weeks later for another session. So that's what I like about things about I like my program. I'm there, I'm present, and the kids kind of they trust me after a while.
And that's really important to build that trust, because so many other programs, and I've seen them in our schools, it's one and done, and you never see them again. But
Yeah.
here you're fostering a relationship. And if the kids were nervous about coming to you at first, they know you're going to be back in a couple of weeks and open up and be able to share with you what they made.
I see a miracle. First day and
Yeah.
the fourth day, I bring that up. I said, you remember first time I walk into your classroom? And they say, yeah, we were so nervous. I said, oh, I was nervous also. But look at the transformation. Some of the kids, I make them speak. I make, with my book, I don't have my book. I see Mike has it in his background. The kids read it. And I ask the kids, how many of you are nervous to speak in front of a class? So 3/4 of them. So I picked those kids to come in front and overcoming their fear, because
Wow.
that was my biggest fear, to speak in front of a crowd, whether it's 20, 1,000 or 5,000. I'm still struggling with that, but I teach them it's okay to be nervous. It's not okay to sit down and just hoping that you maybe let's do it. Let's do it now. Let's do it together. And it's a very powerful message, and that's a very powerful journey that those kids are. So at the end of the program, all of them spoke in front. All of them had a presentation in front of the group, and sometimes we bring the parents, the grandparents, and they talk about their person that inspires them in their lives, and the parents are in the classroom, and they kind of talk to them directly, and it's very, very powerful. A lot of tears, a lot of smile, but a lot of tears, and the parents they don't see themselves as heroes. But when their kids are telling, my dad is my hero, he works 3 jobs, and he inspires me, even though I don't see him often, he inspires me. And then everyone start crying in the classroom, but it's very, very powerful. So
that's amazing.
Stéphane, I just want to give some quick context to our audience, because we have a lot of young hockey parents out there. I'm not going to dive into 1994, but I need to let the parents understand that you're using words like I have low self-esteem. I have to push myself up there. I've dealt with this my whole life. This is a man that is part of one of the top probably 3 most iconic moments in New York Rangers history.
Top one.
I knew you'd say that. I knew you'd say that. All right. This is a guy that probably doesn't have to pay for dinner if he goes into the city. All right. And most of us grew up watching that moment. It's one of you just said it. It's really at the top of the pyramid here. And he's saying that he experiences low self-esteem. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you doing that, because I think that, especially when we look at that team, there's a lot of glamour, there's a lot of magic around it, but you're still human, and you're saying that. And I think it's so important that our audience and the parents understand that, because as again, when you look at it on the TV or you were there in person, that's not what we talk about, right? I mean, you found a way to get through it. So I think it's such a big deal that you're on here saying that I still experience that. We've talked about this before about like imposter syndrome. We all experience it. It doesn't really ever go away, right? But the power of you telling children, and this is such a power that we need to teach our kids, of, do you feel fear? Sorry, that was a little bit of a tongue twister. Good. Feel it. Let's come up to the class and face that fear. That is such, I'm going to equate it to hockey. It's more of a life thing, but it's such an important skill set at a young age of not to fear failure and to understand that that can be your ally, right? If it's done the right way. And your book, Make It Happen, which is called, again, Mike has it right there. We were paging through it. It's fantastic. It really is a guide for kids. It's a good looking book too, of how you overcame this, or I should say overcoming it, right? It's still part of who you are, and how they can too. And the mental fitness of young athletes and young people is so important. It has been neglected for really most of the time period our species has existed. We're just now coming to the understanding that this is just as important as lifting weights or working out or going to practice. So, this is turning into a question, but I want you to talk about Make It Happen a little bit, because it really is a guide for young athletes on their journey. Right. When it went into making that book, where can people find the book too, obviously, because it really is great.
Thank you very much. That's what I see myself. And I like I said earlier, I don't want to live in the past, but sometimes you're tired. Sometimes not only kids, adults, we all go through that. Like if you are experiencing some stuff, some difficult times in your life, it's too easy to go back in what you did wrong in your past. Mm-hmm. And then you can beat yourself up over and over and over. And a lot of people go through depression. I have. I kind of get myself out of it by playing sports or just waking up the next morning. Let's have a good day. But that day that I went through some tough times, and a lot of people can relate to that, you can beat yourself up as much as. But in that book, I give them tools. I give them. It's pretty much my life in a 30-page, 40 pages, and just like. I wrote the book with some of the help with some of the principals in the Bronx, and some of the key words, the anxiety attacks that people go through, low self-esteem, bullying, all those kids, even today, 2023, people are they're going through the same routine every single day. So I try to teach them it's okay. It's okay to be nervous before a tournament. It's okay to be afraid. You're playing the best team in the New York State or Michigan State, that they are undefeated, afraid to lose, afraid to be humiliated in front of your parents. It's okay. But most of the time, you end up playing the game and you realize, well, it wasn't that bad. Or my teammates bailed me out, or we only lost 3-0. It's okay. Sometimes you lose 25-0. It's okay also, as long as I try to teach them, as long as you did your best, not only for that day, but for the week before, 3 weeks before. Do you come to practice and cheat yourself? Only yourself know that. A lot of coaches, we know which kid's going to be cheating the system. We see them. We have enough experience to see who goes through the motion and then they cry about not performing in the game. Try to teach them, do your best and come out. Whatever the result is at the end, you'll be able to come out with your head up, which is hard because deception, losing a big game, a big tournament, it's not always the easiest thing. But as long as you did your best, how long is it going to take? You're going to dwell on it, cope on it. It's when I was their age, 14 years old, it would take me 2, 3, 4 days to get away from it. Now I try to take the hour, 2 hours, and then have a meal with your parents, your brothers and sisters, and just all right, let's work for the next goal that we set during the season.
Something you had said earlier that I want to tap on. You talked about staying present as part of your plan nowadays, right? So this is kind of a two-part question. You mentioned it before. You can't live in the past. You can't live in the future. I find that a lot of anxiety that people feel is living in one of those two spaces. It's reviewing the past or something that hasn't happened yet. And really the present moment is our only reality. So what are the ways that you practice staying present? And maybe can you explain what being present means to you, to the audience?
Well, I use this a lot. Lately, I use the TikTok or Instagram, and I kind of follow the Kobe Bryant, one of my favorite personality. One of Shaq O'Neal, one of the most inspiring person, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. They're not the greatest person. What I like about it, they're the greatest athletes of our time, but also the message they have. They all failed. They all had anxiety, what I'm going through. But the message, because they're talking to me directly, live the moment. If you start thinking about, I scored a goal in 1994. It took me 53 games to score my next playoff goal. That's 7 years. If I start thinking about the 7 years, I can beat myself up and be depressed. If I start thinking about in a month what's going to happen, as an example, I went skydiving a few years ago. I paid my experience a week before, and I live in the future. I live in that 1 week forward, thinking I'm going to overcome my biggest fear, which is height. I lost 7 pounds, 8 pounds in that week. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't have a relationship with anyone else around because I was focusing on the future. And that was a crazy time. Will Smith had a video of that when he skydived years ago, and I totally lived that moment. After the parachute opened, I said, "Well, I get myself sick to my stomach for a week just for that moment." I stopped living, and that's why all those experiences, all the people that I'm following, it's the same message: live the moment. Like today, I'm on a Zoom call. I really appreciate my time. I don't think about tomorrow. I don't think about yesterday. I live the moment. I have a smile on my face. I'm moving forward. I'm looking forward for the outcomes of that podcast, but it's still in the future. It's out of my control. But I'm very present today. I'm happy to be on the Zoom call. That's right. It's not perfect in my life, but ever since I try to live that every single day, I'm a happier person. My surrounding sees that. My kids sees that. My fiance sees that. I said, "Well, you're present. You're more fun to be around." But when I try to go away from it, I'm a different person. So I try to be as present as possible.
I think that's such great advice, Stéphane.
It
I'll
is
tell you,
excellent
yeah.
advice. What kind of rewards have you gotten from writing that book, and what have you heard from people who've read it and who've said this resonates with me?
The book helps the kids. They listen to, they read it, but the reward that I have, it's sharing my experience with some of the parents. I did some seminar. I don't know if I was with Mike. I did a seminar in Brewster, and 2 or 3. I did one in Chicago also. The parents came behind because they didn't want to say, "Well, I'm one of you. I was one of I was bullying my kids." So they waited for the meeting to be over after me sharing my story, and they came in and hugged me. And then they started crying. I said, "I'm sorry." Because no, just express yourself. What's going on as well? I'm one of those parents who are very hard on their kids. The 2-3 hour ride sometime home, there's a voice on my left shoulder says, "Keep your mouth shut," just like keep it quiet, and the other one just keeps telling me just like go for it, abuse him, and then be hard on my son. And just anyway, some of the parents came up to me after me sharing my story. So I think by talking, having a Zoom like this, not everyone can relate to it, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate a little bit in the 50 minutes that we are talking today.
I think a big key to your point, to being present, is hearing that over and over again, that message, because to become conscious to that is really the first step. Whenever we talk about present moment awareness, a lot of people are like, I've got that. I'm well, it's something you have to kind of continually become conscious to. And you said it before, you're still practicing it. There really is no perfection when it comes to being present. Your mind is wired to wander. Right. But like most things in sport, right, if you practice, you get better and better and better to the point you can feel your brain start to wander, and you can kind of grab it and say, "No, I'm here right now." Like you said, I'm on the Zoom right now. I've said that on this show. I love my kids so much, but I'm with you right now. I'm with Christy and Mike right now. This is my present moment. I think it's so important that as coaches and as parents, we help our kids learn how to do this, which you're doing. I think another misnomer is, well, kids can't learn that, or kids have a hard time with that. Kids are better at it than adults, if you want to be really honest about it, right? And I think the more work we can do, like you're doing, Stéphane, to help our kids become present, to help them understand their emotions, to help them understand that failure is a natural part of life. One of the things Kobe said that I love, he always goes, "What is failure? Like, what is it? What does it even mean?" Right? It's you wake up tomorrow and you keep going. You're going to learn. right? And we always say on the show, if you want to win big, you have to risk losing big. When we talk to youth athletes, I've said to them before that, I ask who's afraid before a big game. I always love that one. And, most of them will raise their hand. I'll raise my hand, right? I said, here's the funny thing we don't say to our kids. You're afraid because you care. You're afraid because you care. You love this. Isn't that a great thing? Right. And you can see the polarity of it flip when you do that to these kids. Like, you're supposed to feel something, right? If you didn't care, we wouldn't be here. Right. So these are all messages that we can share with young adults. And Stéphane, I'm going to kind of throw that back to you, of like, to the parents and the coaches listening, right? Because we know the work you do with the kids. To the parents and the coaches, what is your actionable items? What is your quick advice to them, which you've given much advice today to them? If they were going to leave the show with one thing about how they coach or parent their kids, what would you want that to be?
Well, first I want to thank them, because coaching and it takes a lot of effort, a lot of times for the parents and the coaches to be out there. It's not like we're not pounding on you guys to quit what you're doing. Like, what you're doing, but listening to us and listening to my experience and everyone's experience, it's a fun game. It's a fun environment. And I would say one of the advice would be to stop and we need to win. The finishing first, it's the most important thing, and otherwise it's a failure. I think doing your best, the process of the month of working, and you have to evaluate your team, your kids, and where they started. You can emphasize where they at in the month, 2 months, and that's a process. That's a progress and everything. So I would say it's a game. Take it seriously. I'm a very competitive, even though I've been trying to act like I'm a god today, like I'm such a good guy. I'm very competitive. If I'd be coaching a team, I would go as hard as possible, but I would not put my best line on the last 30 seconds of the game. If I know, that's one of those things that I would put the team or the second or third line out there, even though I want to win. I know I'm all over the place at times when I speak, but it's a process. It's a fun time, and don't waste time just on the little things.
Mike always says it perfectly, is if I selected you to play on my team, I've selected you to play on my team, right? And I've always admired Mike for that, as one of the things he says. Now, and you're not all over the place. These all make sense to me, and Mike and Christy here. I have to ask one question. So, Stéphane, full disclosure, I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up a Flyers fan. And so the Devils and the Rangers are close to me, but I've got a lot of Ranger and Devils fans that's friends, and they're going to kill me if I don't ask one question about 1994. But in true fashion of the show, I'm not going to ask a generic question that everybody always asks you. So obviously 1994 is well documented. There's a magic surrounding that team. What I want to know is, what is something about that magic? What is something about that team that no one ever asks about, that was part of fusing that team together to go on to win the Stanley Cup, right? Because again, on the surface, on the TV, we see all of it. But there's so much that happens we don't see, especially in the 90s. Tell me something no one knows about that team that is a real reason that you bonded and got through to the promised land.
Well, winning solve a lot of problems. Like, you can be on the best team, lose. But to your question is the respect among teammates that we have. When I scored, Glenn Graves was one of the first guys to jump on me. Booker Boom Larmer, and then Messier and Glenn Henry, and all of them started to. There was no jealousy, the respect. There was no jabbing. I like to tell people, when I was 24 years old in '94, going in, I would grab my coffee and I could not wait to go sit down and be in that positive environment. It was respect. We had a lot of fun, but the respect that we had amongst the trainers, the coaches, the fans, Messier and Kevin Lowe's and those guys, Graves, they kept telling you got to respect the fans who are waiting in line for hours and hours. Just don't walk by them. I learned that from Adam Graves the last 20 years. Adam signed maybe 600,000 times the same person, but he knows the person's name. He knows the person's wife and kids and the people who works at Madison Square Garden. So what I would take away on the 94 team is the respect. And I'm so proud to say I'm part of a championship team, but also a part of a group who cares for another. And when the time when we're down 3-2 against the Devils, or we play Game 7 at the Garden against the Devils, or Game 7 against the Vancouver Canucks. It's the respect and the caring about each other that what made us successful.
We talk about it all the time on the show, how there's so much beyond talent that will make a team successful. If you're at the NHL level, everyone's talented, right? But it's these little extra things that we don't talk about. And you said it's not even just respect in the locker room; it's respect for the fans. I know our listeners love hearing that, but it's true, right? These are top quality people you're talking about in that locker room, and you said it too. There's no jealousy. I'm sure there's people listening to the show that can attest that they felt that for their own kid or another kid at different times. The ability to develop that respect, that team bond, that cohesiveness is essential if you want to win. And keeping in mind only one team wins. The other thing you brought up, and this is kind of making it come full circle, and then Christy and Mike, I'll throw it to you to close. You talked about the coaches you had. And I think that in the 80s and 90s and really turn of the century, there's a lot of power of negative persuasion in coaching. And I think that in recent years, especially recent years, we've seen that flip to positive. In fact, there's an article out right now talking about the coaches in the final and Paul Maurice and how they're very positive people. And you can go back and look at the Lightning and look at the Avalanche, the coaches, they're very positive people. And there's this common fear, and Stéphane, I'd love for you to talk about this, from parents and coaches, that if I don't scare the kids, they won't try as hard. And I think that's BS. All right. I think you can motivate a kid equally with positive motivation than you can with negative motivation. It's not limited to make them feel fear and they'll skate harder. Do you want to talk about that for a few seconds?
We have responsibility as parents, coaches, to have a positive environment. It's weird that you said that. I was listening to NHL Network this morning on the way to school, and they were talking about Paul Maurice and Cassidy, how positive they are. And the top four, the last four coaches in the last two conference final, two other coaches, they were very positive. J.R. Gallant did a very good job with the Rangers. He was very positive. Winning solved a lot of problems. Paul Maurice is doing a very good job. He's one of the best interviewer I've seen in hockey. And Cassidy's doing a very good job. But look at my ex-coach, Daryl Sutter. He's totally the opposite. He kind of used a negative. He had a lot of success also. He won 2 Stanley Cup with the Kings. And I had him in San Jose for 5 years. He was really hard on us. But the fact is that we could not beat the Colorado Avalanche, the Dallas Stars, or the Red Wings. But today's world, you see guys having iPads. You see the coaches going through some of the plays. I know they're unhappy when they lose, but they don't. I don't think they drag it as long as they did in the past. So that's us coaches. We have it's more pleasant for the parents, the kids going to an environment. It's like that at school also. If you know you're going to go through the door, it's going to be a black cloud. You don't want to go work for them. And fear will crush you down when the tough times occur, because they will occur. And being positive, a lot of times you'll see a positive outcome out there.
It's beautiful. Agree with you totally. Mike, Christy, anything final thoughts before we?
No, I just, your message is so important, especially now. I don't know what's going on with kids and in schools, but I mean, we're seeing more and more kids struggle a lot of difficulties in their lives. So this message is such an important one, and you're delivering it at just the right time. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll take it.
And I would say, just based on being on a call with all these authors now is very intimidating. But I think
we're gonna write a book, Mike. Don't worry.
Between Lee and Christy, Stéphane, I know I share their book to all these youth hockey organizations I work with. As that's my end of the year gift. That's my Christmas present. That's my instead of a medal around their neck, they get to see something. So I think definitely anybody listening, we'll post some the links to get to this. But this is. It's not a book just to have, just like Christy and Lee's books. It's not a book just to, kind of have laying around. It's a book you can read with your kids, read as teammates. You probably don't have to have Steph there all the time, but he's there in the lesson planning. And I think the way you can use the book as a stepping stone for your team, I know I use it as a whole part of team building. And again, we're a hockey podcast. We deal with hockey players. And it's certainly something I think every parent should bring up to their coaching staff and say, hey, listen, what a great other way we could grow as a team if we go through this book together with our elementary school kids and middle school kids, because the stories will resonate. We talk about it all the time. They're going to resonate because it's hockey and we can all speak the same language. But no, I commend you on the book and certainly what you're doing down in the Bronx and New York City, and look forward to watching this become more successful every day. Appreciate
it. Thank you.
So we know Steph's, that's our time. Steph's got to have lunch, and we don't want to not have his lunch today. So we appreciate you joining us. He's at his school right now. Stéphane Matteau on Our Kids Play Hockey. For Christy Casciano, Burns, Mike Benelli, I'm Lee Elias. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Stéphane, thank you for being here today. We're going to make sure we put some links on our website for you. Head over to ourkidsplayhockey.com for that. He's holding up. It says Matteau Go Club right now. This has been a fantastic episode. Stéphane, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you next time on Our Kids Play Hockey. Have a great week, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.